This hour of the Alan Autry Show is sponsored by Sinlaw, the most realistic artificial grass in the Central Valley.
From NFL quarterback to Hollywood to the mayor's office and now behind the mic at KXEX, this is the Alan Autry Show. No retreat.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
What the hell's going on out here? Everybody grabbing out there. Nobody.
That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
So, 5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Free at last. Free at last. Thank God Almighty. We are free.
You're listening to the Alan Autry Show on the best talk in town. Talk Radio 1550 KXEX.
And welcome to Taco Tuesday, Fresno, California, broadcasting from our new location in Clovis.
Man, I like coming over here.
I like it.
Yeah, I do. Closer to my house.
Guillermo, you're listening to the dulcet paratones of Mr. Bullet Bob Leone, by the way, if you're just listening by radio. I dare you to do that routine one day.
It's already been done. I don't have to do it.
No, I dare you to do an homage to that and
to Letson and Landry.
See how quick you get canceled. But welcome to the show, folks. Taco Tuesday, and no Taco Tuesday would be complete without our friend, our top fan of Taco Tuesday. Well, I think he says he's a top fan of our show, period. Listens all the time, 24/7, and that's our friend Chewy. From Mexico, parts unknown in Mexico. He moves around, Chewy. Chewy, are you there?
Oh, my word.
He's not done yet. Man, if that doesn't get your fire burning, your wood's wet. I mean, without Chewy's encouragement and I don't know where we'd be as a show.
I just love his enthusiasm.
Oh, yes.
It's always there. It's never down. He's always up.
Never like the Bulldogs.
Yeah.
Nice segue there. Did you see that sleepwalk masquerading as a football game? Our beloved Fresno State Bulldogs laying a big fat egg against their rival San Jose State Spartans. Hate to lead the show off with that locally, but we got to. Bobby, disappointed as much as I am?
Oh, terribly. Yeah.
What happened?
Terribly. Well, I don't know.
They didn't look like they were ready to play at all.
I'm telling you, I think and I was talking to my buddy Dave Ramirez yesterday at golf, and I told him I thought that they spent all their bullets the previous week against Boise State.
Yeah.
They were psyched. They were ready to play, and I think they let down. Now, San Jose had 2 weeks to prepare because they had a bye last week. And I just don't think the Bulldogs were mentally, well, obviously they weren't mentally there and just couldn't pull it off. And conversely, San Jose was really psyched. They wanted to rip them, and they did.
Well, they'd won 3 straight.
They made it 4 straight now.
And scored a lot of points in doing so.
Good ball.
Good
ball club.
No pass rush. And then they just got the running game of San Jose State. They had 2 of those runners that were averaging almost 7 yards a carry the first half.
The one kid ended up with 200 yards and 19 carries. So that's over 10 yards a pop.
And one of them was a Fresno boy. I don't know how he got away.
Well,
you can understand when they do like this kid from Georgia, Kendall Milton.
Yeah.
He was out of Buchanan.
Right.
Yeah, offers Georgia, Alabama, and everyone. You can understand you lose to that school.
Oh, absolutely.
And nothing against San Jose State. But, I mean, they also let Fresno State let Josh Allen get away.
Yeah, that still sticks in my craw.
Yeah, I mean that's like letting Carlos Brown get away, which they did. Carlos Brown went to Pacific.
But let me ask you this:
Darryl Rogers never asked him to stay, but he, God rest his soul, Darryl told the media that he did after I torched him as Carlos Brown here at Bulldogs at Ratcliffe Stadium. That's another story.
Well, you guys had some great teams then, though. I remember. I don't know if we want to go
we're
nostalgia.
all over the board. Nobody knows what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
You know
okay.
that.
All right.
So let's get on
Never
the.
mind.
We got to get to the pressing issue of the day. I am so afraid. I'm at the edge of my seat. I'm biting my nails. I can't sleep at night. I am a nervous
stomach upset.
I am a nervous freaking wreck. It's coming out of both ends. I'm so scared that the government might shut down in 2 weeks. There might be a government shutdown. Have you listened to the media?
No.
Oh my gosh.
No.
The world. Oh God. The war in Ukraine. The war in the Middle East. Out of control.
Donald
inflation.
Trump. Well, Donald Trump's still on the front page.
That's nothing compared to the horror that could happen in 2 weeks if the government shuts down and the forest rangers have to wait an extra few weeks for their check, or that bureaucrat in the IRS has to wait another couple of days.
Yeah, well, that's always the pitfalls of not.
You know what I do? Seriously, I wouldn't call it to prove a point, but they're hanging this paper ghost, whatever it is, in front of us. Of my God, what would happen? We would default on our loans and this and that. If it went 24 hours or 1 hour past the deadline, if you don't make it by this time, this certain day, and you don't have an agreement to print more money and spend more money, that the country and the world is going to fall completely apart. I think they ought to do a test run, don't you think? Just let it run out and just see what happens.
Yeah. Well,
because
then we would know for sure.
Well, that's my point. If you have a system that's so fragile, you notice I said fragile instead of fragile.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a learned man. I got some book learning.
Yeah.
If our system is so fragile that if you went over a day, or God forbid a week, without a government being funded. Now, by the way, you couldn't do common sense things like, well, let's go ahead and fund the military, but everybody else wait a little bit. You know, that's sort of common sense thing. If you're that fragile, man, you got a lot of overhauling to do.
You would think.
Why not? Yeah, it's going to eventually implode anyway.
Well,
why not implode earlier rather than later?
Well,
which I don't think is going to be an implosion.
And well, I don't either. I mean, what would happen?
Are you sick of hearing as much as I am, though?
Sick of hearing about what?
Well, they're going to shut the government down.
Yeah,
you better be scared to death. Oh, my God. It's
the sky's falling.
It was the leading story on CNN, MSNBC. They even covered it on Fox. Not the lead story, but the second story. Not quite as the alarming thing, but it was still out there. Man, you got to get this thing settled. And they're more focused, the left, on Mike Johnson, the new speaker's app of him holding him and his kid accountable, you know, for you know, stuff that Christians, you know, have to fight temptations like everybody else. He made an agreement with his son, which I think is fine. If you understand the Christian faith, there's nothing wrong with that. But they're trying to paint him like he's some weirdo out of left field. And, you know, rather focus on that than, and I think deep inside they want it to run out, and they want all of the negative things to happen, they meaning the Democrats, because Joe Biden, the nowhere man, quite honestly, doesn't have many arrows in his quiver, right?
There's a song title
for the
in
election. Oh, we're going to play that. That's him. That's a story about him.
Well,
it was a very prescient song written back in the day.
Well,
nowhere man, please listen. You don't know what you're missing.
Well, and is Congress going to be around, or are they going to take another vacation here real quick? Because, you know, Thanksgiving's coming up. And they always seem to time these things. Well, we need to get it done by this time, but we're going to go take our time off anyway while the government shuts down and we go through all of the ramifications of that, whatever those are.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway, I'm just really sick and tired of this thing. Just I wish, again, they would let it run out so we at least know anything that's going to happen within several months of you not funding the government fully would at least give us a better, more accurate snapshot of what really is at stake. And it might uncover some things that could be cut. You're going to have to start cutting spending sometime, somewhere in this bloated budget.
Yeah.
$32 trillion in debt. And now you've got not the deficit, but the debt of the yearly budget is now a couple of trillion.
Yeah.
That's frightening.
Yeah, it really is.
Okay, my other deal.
That's all I can say about that.
I got to ask you this.
Okay.
Because it hit me the other day.
Okay.
Like in this cranium of mine. Why is China, I think most people agree, let's not call them, I think some people think they're an enemy, an adversary. Kind of nuts. Let's not talk about it in those terms. Because it may very well be in many aspects that they are. I happen to think they are. But let's just say that they are what they advertise themselves to be to the rest of the world. A peaceful country just competing. Just competing and competing fairly. They got this Belt and Road Initiative, which is basically what the United States did after World War II. Go in and make relationships with the rest of the world, set up factories there, kill domestic production at home and ship it to cheaper foreign labor, tie up the politics, buy off the politicians around the world. So China looked over there and goes, all right, let's just use the capitalist model. But so let's just look at it from a competition standpoint, that they're a competitor, because we embrace that.
Yeah.
Competition. If you can't compete, can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. We'll put our workforce up against anybody in the world, yada, yada, so on and so forth. So you got to fight the smart fight. Fight the good fight, but the smart fight. Why in the world are we allowing hundreds and perhaps thousands of Chinese students over here studying at the top universities, infiltrating the academic system, developing relationships with not only professors, but we know with Eric Swalwell, the stuff that went on there, the congressman, getting inside the DNA, if you will, of everything in our country, including those things that should be secretive if you're a competing country. For years, we've known that China has stolen our intellectual property, breaking into computers, various ways of using their thievery. But it's common knowledge. They'll steal whatever they can. Yet on the flip side, where are our hundreds and thousands of exchange students studying in Beijing and allowed the same freedom that we allowed their students here? Basically, they're saying you can go anywhere from Beijing to Shanghai, out in the country. You can go interview the peasants. You can interview the billionaires, because there's a lot of them in China, by the way. Why is that not allowed? I don't even know if that program's even functioning right now in China. Why is that, Bob? Why? I think it's a rhetorical question why the Chinese don't allow it, because they're not going to allow their secrets to get out. Because you know why? You would have found out pretty quick that, COVID didn't come from eating a dead bat from a wet market. It came from escaping the Wuhan lab. And you'd probably have a few students that put two and two together and say, hey, Sean, yeah, Buffy, why don't we go to the Wuhan lab after class today in Beijing and ask around and talk to some of the scientists there, like they can do here, like the Chinese students can do here. They can go anywhere and ask anybody anything without being afraid to
you're right. It's a rhetorical question.
But why don't we insist on that? That we have that same. There's students that would do that. That would go over there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They'd probably be lining up and waiting for their spot to be able to go over there. I don't know.
But it's an interesting.
That's an interesting.
Yeah.
point.
Why is China playing like San Jose State and we're playing like the Bulldogs? In the game. China's coming out ready to win, baby. They're gonna. And Jim, you got to play like Jim Harbaugh. Harbaugh was out stealing signs, man. For Michigan, the NC2A banned him. He's gonna be back, man. You'll
get hired by the NFL.
You got to curse the darkness, turn on the light, man. China's stealing our signs. But the world's not banning them.
Nope.
They're saying, way to go. Why? Because you kicked America's butt. You're kicking America's butt, and the world would be better without.
Well, I think that also leads to another question, Hoss, which is, and and I've watched a lot of newscasts and a lot of videos about free societies allowing certain individuals into their country. And if enough of that is done, it changes the demographic enough that it changes the country and the thinking of it takes the traditional thinking and turns it on its head. In other words, for example, in London, over the weekend, there were 300,000 demonstrators demonstrating for free Palestine. Part of the reason for that is that there is a huge Islamic population in London. They're changing the demographic. They're changing the thinking of the way things are done over there. The mayor of London is Muslim. One of the secretaries, home secretaries, is from another part of the UK who is also a Muslim. So we have allowed, due to our kindness, really is what it comes down to. You know, come one, come all, take the masses.
And steal whatever you want to. As long as it's not,
it's changing.
It's less than $900 worth of top secret information. We won't prosecute you.
$950. I guess the short answer is it's changing the demographic.
Yeah, no,
and it's changing the thinking. And now, what's green is blue, and what's red is orange.
I get you. I agree. Why aren't we doing something about it?
Well, I can't answer.
I mean, I think it's a very valid parallel. You're not. Here in America, you're not punishing criminals. You're rewarding them.
Yep.
When you steal, you're rewarded. Why? Because you had a poor upbringing, I guess. They check in if you were raised poor or raised in a poor neighborhood.
You're entitled.
Then we make it up.
Steal.
And I guess, you can steal all of our intellectual property, China, because at one time you were a third world country. You're still recognized that, which is unbelievable. You're kicking our butt and everything from technology to manufacturing of electric cars, and I guess from technology, that's not much of a jump but actually to even exporting food. It confounds me because it's been happening for years and years and years.
Yeah, this is nothing new.
The chickens have come home to roost.
This is nothing new.
Because here's the difference. China is only going, no matter how brilliant a young lady or young man may be, who they send over here, because trust me, they vet them. Every Chinese exchange student from mainland China who comes here has been fully programmed by the CCP, by the Communist Party. They are complete 100% nationalist, and they are scared to death to cross the Communist Party of China in any way, or they will disappear, like most dissidents. So you have these folks coming in, going to class, and they're very, very smart. They get these gregarious personalities of the kids that guys and women and gals you'd want to hang out with. And in particular, the Ivy League, they do.
Mm-hmm.
So day in and day out, the students from America are hearing how great it is in China. How, hey, that Uyghur issue, that's not really what's going on. Our government really doesn't have 1 million Muslims that they hold as slave labor. That's not. And about that lockdown, when people died inside their apartments, that's just the crooked press. That's hyperbole. That's fake news. Let me tell you what's really happened. Let me tell you about the atrocities that China faced during World War II and yada, yada, yada. That's what our kids are listening to. I guarantee you, they're not going to send somebody critical or allow somebody to enter a university from Communist China that's going to be a critic of Communist China. It just doesn't happen. Now, my point is, why don't we demand, okay, you come in and do this, but we're going to pick our kids that we want to go over there. And we're going to make sure that these are kids that love freedom, love individual freedoms, that love America. And you have to allow them to interact with your students without any intimidation, just like we do not interact with your kids and stop them from saying what they want to say. Now, we go ahead and make sure we send some folks over there that not only learn about China and build that bridge, which I'm all for, but are willing also to tell the truth to the kids in China that not all police are like or like Derek Chauvin. That, by the way, do you know your country is implementing capitalism as, if you think of it as bad, as worse than America in terms of greed? How they're in every other country. You talk about the colonialism from America and Great Britain. You are colonizing all of Africa right now and the Middle East right now. Chinese colonialism. To be able to have students to interact openly and honestly with the Chinese students. Seems to me that could be I wouldn't call it an easy win, but it's one that you would hope that you would see the Chinese agree to that. But if they don't, further proof that their motives are not very righteous.
Yeah.
It is.
It's a great question. I don't know. But now.
Well, Bob, why do I have you on the show if you don't know?
Well,
I know you know. You have an answer to this. You always do.
I guess my first question is, why are you laying in bed at night at 11 o'clock thinking about that kind of stuff? Is that just the way your mind works?
My later age, I don't know.
It used to be thinking up plays.
I
now
know. It's just a tsunami.
See, if this guy goes down 10 yards and goes left.
When I was riding the tractor, planting that cotton out.
Now you're thinking about, hey, well, how come we can't send students to China? Well,
I don't know.
You're off your basic first blush response has to be because it's China. It's a communist country. They don't want us there, other than for our technological expertise.
Yeah, but why do we not fight fire with fire?
Well, I can't answer that.
Why can't Fresno State, when they get hit in this mouth with a bunch of raw emotion and commitment, react the same way instead of going deeper into a funk? And I'm not picking. I love our Bulldogs. I love our coach. I love everything about it. I'm kind of picking on them just to kind of make a point because every team has a down time. But I guarantee you, Jeff Tepper's going to wake his team up, and the next game they're going to be ready to go. Well, that's what I'm saying. When's America going to wake up? When are you going to have a head coach with the guts enough to say, you really stuck up the joint. You stunk it up. Yeah. And we got to get things back on track. It's going to come. We need a good head coach as president of the United States, not the nowhere man.
Yeah. Well,
that's going to say, whoever it is, Democrat, Republican, that's going to say, listen, we're tired of losing the game. We can't keep losing the game in China. We can't lose the game at the border. We can't lose the game with crime on our streets. We got to stop losing the game and controlling inflation. We got to start winning the game. We're seeing the slow, steady, inexorable disappearance of our middle class. We got to stop this stuff.
Well,
it's
not going to happen. It's not going to happen with Uncle Joe.
Cool.
Hey, by the way, and this may be a subject for a whole show as we continue through the year into 24 with regard to viable candidates. Heard a Democratic spokesman, I guess not spokesman, a Democratic party person on one of the news shows
Democratic
this morning.
Party person?
Yeah, party person.
That narrows it down to about
I forget
2,000.
I forget the name.
No, I'm kidding you. Go ahead.
But they are a party person.
That's what I'm saying.
And there's some real concern about Biden even making it to the nomination.
Yeah.
So that, because they were talking about all the things he hasn't done. So that really leads me to the question of, and we may have talked about this months ago, but as we draw closer to the election and nominations, it becomes more focused. Who, right now, in your opinion, who do you think, if it's not Joe, because there are a lot of Democrats that don't want Joe, who, in your opinion, is standing out at this point on November 13th of 23, a year from the 51 weeks from the election?
I think there'll be a big recruitment effort to get this Andy Beshear out of Kentucky, the governor of Kentucky.
Oh, okay. That's a new name. I haven't heard.
Yeah. Yeah. He's for coal. He's for energy independence. He has enough things that would appeal to Republicans, and he's a Democrat. And I think a lot of folks are thinking like Bill Maher, just throw me another Democrat out there and I'll vote for him. And Andy Beshear would be very, very formidable. He beat back a very strong, I forget his name, African-American rising star there for the Republican. He was an incumbent, but in a deep, deep red state, a state that Trump won by 20 points.
Oh, my goodness.
This Bashir, and I listened to him the other day, sound bites. Kind of a throwback type guy. I wouldn't call him John Kennedy-esque. He's not as good looking. He's obviously not as conservative a Democrat as John Kennedy, because John Kennedy was, get this, ready for this, a pro-life Democrat. They're going to find too many of them around. But I think I don't think he'll do it. I think in 2028, he's formidable. But I may be surprised because the polls say, if you believe these polls, and I don't know if I do yet, it has Trump ahead in 5 of the 6 battleground states on a head-to-head with Biden.
Yep.
But on a generic ballot, when you say Trump against any other Democrat, the Democrat wins.
Mm-hmm.
That could be enough to lure somebody like Bashir. I don't think it's going to be Newsom. I think the party realizes he's
a little
too much,
toxic. Don't
too much baggage.
Yeah, he's a little toxic.
And they just did a poll here in California, and he's underwater again in his own state.
Knock me over with a feather.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I don't care if you're liberal or conservative or progressive or whatever. This guy has made a total mess of this state, and he's ruined. What was that surplus we had? $100 million or $1 billion that we had in California that is now suddenly gone somewhere.
Yeah.
And he stands up there and says, I'm still doing a great job.
He gave it away, buying votes. He tried to buy votes, gave it all.
I'm doing a great job for the state.
Instead of creating a reserve.
More people leaving every day.
Yeah, and what's crazy about it is, because you talk about a low estimation and a low regard for the intelligence of just the average American, but of your own party, you say, you know what, there's so much crap in this state that I've been stepping in, every Californian's been stepping in, but it's such good crap. We want to export it to every state so you have
non-smelling crap.
Clean, non-smelling crap. And we were going to bring it to your state so you can have the joy of stepping in that crap with us, too.
Misery loves company, right?
Yeah, I mean, it makes no sense. He doesn't have...
it really doesn't.
But that's why I think he, and I think he's starting to understand that. Maybe not. I think he wants to be recruited. His big his countrywide tour, fell flat. His visit to the White House when he threw his coat over his shoulder. And that picture of him with the turned-up collar at the French Laundry during the COVID thing that still irritates and triggers a lot of people on the left and right.
Yep. And
then his trip to China. I mean, people in his own party going, try to help Biden. That might just mean to shut up. But you from a state make a visit to China with everything that's going on in the Ukraine war. You just look like a guy starving for attention.
Well, he is. He's always been that way.
So this guy Bashir, he is a real factor.
I'm going to have to look him up. I'd heard his name peripherally, but never investigated.
Deep red state. Wins, I think, by 52%. Now, that may not sound like, but in today's close elections, that's winning handily. Not a landslide, but handily. And against a rising star. And people are looking at that race, and he is somebody who came out of nowhere. Now, when you look at that, it's kind of reminiscent of, in a way, of when Bill Clinton ran against George Bush. You got a guy like Trump who's winning in 5 battleground states against Biden, right? And a lot of the people on the left saying he'd probably win because Biden has more crap to step into with 2 wars and the economy and the border and crime than Trump has. He'll just be in court, and people are getting more and more sympathetic to him being singled out. So Biden has... And nobody ran against George H. Bush back in the day. They couldn't find a candidate because he came out of Desert Storm with the highest poll numbers of any president ever, 81% out of Desert Storm. He was looked at as unbeatable for a second term. But you got a guy out of Arkansas that nobody knew that had an unbelievable ability to connect to people on a personal level. You even listen to Dan Bongino talk about it.
Yeah, had that charisma.
He guarded Clinton for all these years. He didn't like his policies at all. But I know a lot of people. My wife's from Arkansas. And he had this gift way back when that when he talked to you, whether it was one-on-one out in the country or in a crowded ballroom at some big to-do event, when he was speaking to you, whether it was 30 seconds or 30 minutes, you felt he was talking just to you. Nobody else existed. Now, that kind of gift is usually reserved for, like, entertainers. They said that about Frank Sinatra. They said when Sinatra sang, and you were there at his live concerts, like he was singing to you. Yeah. They had John Kennedy supposedly had that. Elvis Presley. Mm-hmm. But again, very few politicians, although I mentioned one, John Kennedy. But he came out of nowhere, and he came out with a brilliant slogan. He didn't attack Bush. He was too popular. He said, things are good. Our country, George H. Bush is a good man, but we can do better. We have to do better. In education, the economy, too many people left behind. And
That's a good impression.
And then when he broke out the saxophone,
I was just going to mention
Jay Leno, he got the youth. Yep. And I don't know if Andy Bashir can play the saxophone. He appears to not quite have all of the charisma of Clinton, but I tell you what, he's got some of it.
Yeah.
And that's shown through in that one interview that I just saw on CNN. The way he talks. And so he's somebody you want to look out for. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we hit it yesterday on the show in the last segment about this Hamas movement and how evil they are. And if it's really no decision if you care about who's right, who's wrong. And don't call Hamas an underdog. And we'll talk about that when we come back. It's Alan Autry, No Retreat with Bullet Bob on Taco Tuesday.
Makes no difference what group I'm in.
Everyday people.
Tim Scott's dropping out.
Yeah, we talked about it. You know, it's great to be this close to our kind of show. Like if I was Guillermo was talking about advertising. I wouldn't put We'll do it so long for it doesn't take. Yeah. You know what? Yeah, do the lead in, and we'll see how long we get before.
He's a real nowhere man, sitting in his nowhere land, making all his nowhere plans.
This hour of the Alan Autry Show is sponsored by Sinlaw, the most realistic artificial grass in the Central Valley.
Welcome back to Alan Autry, Nowhere Street.
Oh, sorry, just got carried
Taco
away.
Tuesday. That is my new moniker for Joe Biden, the Nowhere Man. Let's just listen to the song, and you'll know what I mean. It's so Joe Biden's song. I can't help it. When next thing it gets in my head, and don't say, "Well, you broke your promise. You're being rude. You're calling him names." No, I'm not. I'm just describing what I feel is his persona as president, what he's done and hasn't done. And by the way, I never said I wouldn't call out behavior. I mean, I'm not going to I don't use profanity. You're not going to hear that from me. Even privately, I don't. I try not to. When I dropped that weight on my toe in the Fort Washington Fitness, I did say something that I regretted. But I think I'm going to get a mulligan for that with St. Peter. Yeah, it's a little bit more than that. Quite a few times.
Sounds like me when I hit a bad golf shot.
Quite a few times.
Which is quite often.
Didn't you feel bad after you said it, though? I do immediately. I got to shower twice when I get home.
Just to get it off of you.
Yeah, I just feel like I let myself down, even though I was the only one who heard it. But God heard it.
God hears everything.
You know, I hear Hamas being referred to as the underdog. That a lot of
now who?
Oh, you hear it all the time, and a lot of the young people who are very uninformed, especially went to an Ivy League school. I'm sorry, I hate to say this, but if you got a liberal arts degree from any Ivy League school, you are much dumber than your freshman year when you entered. I'm serious.
It's an institution of lower learning.
I'm really, Thomas Sowell said the same thing. You have been programmed, you've been fed a bunch of misinformation, and if you bought that hook, line, and sinker, it is what it is. And they're not the only institution. You have these institutions of higher learning all over the country that have taught that Hamas is the underdog. First of all, underdogs should be left in the athletic world. You know, the New York Jets 1969 were underdogs. Buster Douglas, when he fought Mike Tyson, was an underdog. Okay? It denotes something noble, that somebody's down. The little engine that could was an underdog. That you want to root for the underdog because of they're basically good, and they're fighting the good fight, and everybody's against them, or the odds are so stacked against them. I love underdogs. Okay, if that person who's an underdog is worthy of it, the Hillside Strangler, when he was in a courtroom, was not an underdog. He was where he should have been, where massive outrage against his behavior. Have a fair trial, okay. Nazi Germany, the Nazis were not underdogs after they were destroyed. You know, the Jews were underdog because they didn't do anything wrong. Race people. Underdogs, yes. Hamas, just because you have the wrath of God coming down, raining down on this terrorist organization that seeks to destroy every Jew, kill them, decapitate them, video them, and send the video to the parents of those you just butchered, and they're getting their butt kicked in Gaza. They're not underdogs. They're getting what they deserve. And the hope should be that they get knocked out, that you don't get up off the canvas. You don't pull for them to reconstitute and come back again. What do you think about that, Pearl? I mean, words mean matter. We did a show last week or yesterday on using words, that they do mean things.
Yeah.
And don't dignify Hamas with underdog.
I just don't, I think it's one of those things, Hoss. We've seen this last weekend, well, since the attacks of October 7th, we've seen pro-Hamas demonstrations. And it's all over the news, and it's day in, day out. Hamas is not that bad. They're just trying to do this.
Martyrs, freedom fighters.
Yeah, exact freedom fighters.
Tear down the posters of the hostages.
Yeah. And all of this stuff, and it's just a daily bombardment of this pro-Hamas garbage that, that lie, if you tell it enough, pretty soon you start to believe it.
Sure. Absolutely.
You just get inundated with this stuff day in, day out.
Taught that since they
exactly.
came out of the womb.
Exactly. So now all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, now when something does occur, well, they weren't the bad guys. They were the good guys. And they've only got X number of thousands of freedom fighters against the entire IDF. And the U.S. With their help, with the carriers and the planes and everything else. So what you're hearing about all of this is not true. Here's the real story.
Exactly.
And
right.
if they feed it to you enough, the vulnerable and the ignorant are going to start believing it.
Well, we said on the show the other day, 100% agree with you, Pearl. Islamophobia is bad. Islamophobia is bad. Hamasophobia is not bad.
No.
In fact, I said it the other day, and I'll say it now. If you don't have Hamasophobia now, you need to get it as quick as you can. You need to get the worst case of Hamasophobia that you can possibly get. You don't want to get well from Hamasophobia, because once you think you're getting well, then you have parties celebrating freedom with no guns around, and the next thing you know, Hamas has reconstituted, and come flying across that border to cut your head off. That's what happens when you lose your Hamasophobia.
Yep.
It should be a condition you want to attain, because you know what it's in the same category? Clanophobia. Same thing. Nazi phobia. Same thing. Idi Aminophobia. A guy who killed
Pol Pot-ophobia.
Pol Pot-ophobia. Idi Aminophobia. Not only killed his enemies, he ate them. He had a little Dahmer complex. There's a difference between that and Islamophobia, and that distinction is not being made on the media. The media, they know that there's a distinction there, yet they refuse to make it. And you know, it's not just me and Bob here sitting there, or Bob and I, properly, that Hamasophobia is innately evil, and you're not going to be able to negotiate with them. I took a lot of heat. So, well, what do you mean you can't negotiate with them? Well, let me tell you someone else who believes that, and he's a much more valid individual and much more brings much more credibility to that statement, is a fellow named Mossab Hassan Youssef. I'll say that again, Mossab Hassan Youssef. You know who he is? I'll tell you who he is. He's the son of the founder of Hamas. Okay? He wrote a book on what Hamas is and is not. And here's what he says about Hamas. He says you can't negotiate with them. You can't use normal political strategies with Hamas because they're operating from a 7th century mentality, okay, which is based on chaos, okay? This is his words, not mine. They're fighting Israel, which is a 21st century mentality that believes in order. Things are orderly. Hamas believes anything is acceptable, that the 7th century mentality is one of tribalism. Mm-hmm. And let me, the tribalism from that century and prior to that was an annihilation philosophy. Your tribe must go out and not just defeat another tribe that they're fighting with. They must annihilate that tribe or get annihilated in the process.
Right.
So that's why you're not going to negotiate. Well, if you don't stop beheading people, and if you don't release the hostages and you don't give up peacefully, we're going to destroy you and kill you. They don't care because they believe they're fulfilling their mission from Muhammad to die, to be annihilated. How do you, and that was Mr. Youssef's position from the founder of Hamas. And he saw this, he said, this is wrong. He escaped that, and he's writing books, and he moves around all over the place. And they ask him, you know, how high are you on the Hamas hit list? He goes, I'm probably up close to the top because of this. So that's what you're dealing with. And again, it's not just me saying it. People in the know, and it's the old saying, you don't want to admit the truth because it's so ugly, so difficult to accept that you just kind of run from it. And that's what Israel is facing. How would you, and make no mistake, the United States of America is the big Satan. If they had the capability, when you're doing that little hoedown in a little town in Natchez, Mississippi, or L.A., or Des Moines, Iowa, or New York City, or Wisconsin, and they had the capability to pop up out of tunnels and come after you at that Jason Aldean concert, they would kill as many of you, whether you supported them or not. You can say, hey, man, I'm on your side. They don't care.
Nope.
They don't
late
care.
For that.
There were some sympathetic, they say, quite a few Hamas sympathizers that have been taken hostage and that were killed. And by the way, just to give you another little nuanced differences, it's not too nuanced, I think it's pretty blatant. Israel just revised their numbers on people that were killed on October 7th, Bobby. Folks, listeners. Now, I want you to think about this, because I think it tells a lot. They reduced the number from 1,400 to 1,200. That should tell you a lot. They would get more political capital by going up with the number. Hey, sorry, it was 1,400. If they were lying by nature, the Jewish faith is one based on shalt not lie. Now, they don't always live up to that, but that's one of the 10 commandments. They did a recount and 1,200. Compare that to Hamas and the supporters of radical Islam who said that Israel bombed the hospital, 500 people were killed, which, by the way, never happened. It was a rocket fired by Hamas that hit the hospital, and not only weren't 500 killed, there was like 19 of them that were killed, but they claimed it was Israel and inflated the number to get world opinion more on their side. That should tell you a little bit about who is the underdog and who you should be supporting in this.
Yeah. Well, earlier we talked, was it yesterday? We talked about the culture and how it's changing. And boy, we're running out of time here. I don't know if I can get to this point. Probably just have to leave it for next time. But where are all the woke people who were demonstrating about everything and anything here a few years ago in 2020 about people calling them bad names, and I have a bad feeling because you're threatening me with your words?
Yeah.
Where are they with all of this, with the anti-Semitism?
Exactly.
Where are they?
Yeah.
They're protesting.
They have made
for Hamas.
The woke left has made hypocrisy an art form.
Capital H.
They are just, anyway. Folks, thank you for tuning in. God bless you. God bless America. And just do your best and let God do the rest. And I promise it's going to turn out the way it's supposed to. We may not like it at the beginning. Trust in Him, and He will see us through, and He's going to take care of us. Love y'all. Bye-bye now.